Hey everyone, we're going to be continuing our Team Comp Guide series with the Beginner's Guide to the Jormungand Slay Comp. We were talking about what the cards involved, how to get into this comp, and what the strengths and the weaknesses are. Please remember to like and subscribe if you haven't already. Let's get started. So the core of this comp starts with the Jormungand. Jormungand is a 2020 or upgraded, as you see here, a 40/40 that when it slays gets 2020 or upgraded 40/40 for this brawl only. So it's a temporary buff, much like Vampire, but it's a very large buff. An upgraded Lancelot gets +4/+4 permanently. This is getting +40/40. So obviously it can grow quite a bit, and a lot of people are drawn to this card because it's one of the bigger characters in the game, but they sometimes find that they get outscaled and it looks a little bit embarrassing when it's going up against, 200 treants or something along those lines. So you need to really pick your spots with the Jormungand, and this comp is aimed around maximizing its power and getting it to function. So the biggest issue you have with a character like this, with a temporary slay buff, is that if it doesn't survive the slay, you get no value out of it. So we need it to be big enough to survive the slay, and then, big enough to, hopefully get more value out of that, because if it's just surviving the slay and trading for two characters, we don't want to put too much investment in something that just goes 1-for-1 or 2-for-2. So how do we make this comp work? And the key here is usually going to be something like a Grimsoul. Grimsoul has the last breath ability, trigger a slay ability on one of your characters. What this does is allow the Jormungand to gain stats before it has to attack. And by doing so, it greatly increases the odds of it surviving the attack and then getting the slay ability naturally through that attack. So what we do here is utilize the Grimsoul to put the Jormungand over that hump and then snowball from there. So unlike a lot of Slay comps, you're going to be having your Jormungand attack later on, sometimes second, sometimes even later, because you want your Grimsoul to be the first thing to trigger. So, the Grimsoul is sort of the, engine of this comp, whereas the Jormungand is the main beef that we're going to be trying to utilize. The Baba Yaga is not strictly necessary, but is very powerful in this comp because it doubles the slay abilities. If 40/40 is powerful, 80/80 is twice as powerful. And it also, of course, works with the Grimsoul. So if we trigger a Grimsoul on a buffed Jormungand, which is an unupgraded Grimsoul and Baba Yaga, we're going to get +80/+80 to our Jormungand. If we are able to upgrade the Baba Yaga, it triples those slay abilities, and if the Grimsoul is also upgraded, we'll get 2 procs of 40/40 that are tripled, which is 240/240, so it's basically 6 times 40/40. And obviously, a 240/240 that is then attacking and maybe getting another 120/120 really starts to become formidable and can take down a lot of boards that you wouldn't otherwise be able to compete with at all. When you see the stats on your starting board, you might look a little bit wimpy, but once you get this little combo going, you get quite strong. So those 3 characters make up the main core of this comp. You're going to have the Grimsoul attacking first, you're going to have the Jormungand probably second most of the time I play it, because you do want it to get its slay buff early so it can survive any attacks from enemies. You'd also don't want to deal with any Cupids or Medusas or some kind of shenanigans. And you want to put the Baba Yaga it doesn't actually have to be behind the Grimsoul, you just want it behind the Jormungand, so you can sort of figure out where you want to place it on your back row. Supporting cast, so that's the core. It's a very compact core, it's just 3 characters. If you get those 3 characters, I'd say even if you just have an upgraded Jormungand and unupgraded of the other 2, you're good to go. You can make a decent attempt with this comp. It might not be the strongest in the lobby, but if you get it early, you're going to be able to take down a lot of boards that, people are otherwise presenting. It can compete with, a lot of, boards that when people are just hitting level 6 or haven't got time to triple out their lordies, or haven't got the round table with the treants, or, things along that, or like the Ashwood Elms, things that might threaten the Jormungand when it attacks. So Hermes Boots is just a 2-drop treasure that's very key to this comp. It's not necessary, but it takes away a lot of the variance. Obviously, in most cases, you get the first attack 50% of the time. This makes 100% of the time. It makes your Grimsoul attacking first guaranteed, and that means that there's not the chance that the enemy attacks into your Jormungand before it has the chance to proc any slay buffs, which is the whole point of putting this Grim Soul thing together. The second thing, which is sort of interesting here, is the Harvest Moon. Harvest Moon is a really interesting card that I think is really interesting treasure that I think a lot of people are catching on to how powerful it is, particularly with some Sad Dracula Medusa combo. But in this board, so it's important to note that with Grim Soul, the only slay character we want to have is going to be the Jormungand, because we need it to hit it every single time. We don't want to take the chance that it accidentally activates a different slay. So the only thing the Harvest Moon would do in this board is make your Jormungand attack twice. But that's usually enough. If it gets 2 clean attacks off, as an upgraded character with a Baba Yaga behind it, it's going to be very large. It's going to take down a lot of your opponent's front line, which are usually the beefiest units, and it's really going to give itself, a chance to snowball over your opponent's entire comp. So if you see this on level 5, if you triple your Baba Yaga, for instance, this is a great one to grab. There are also other 5s that are great. Tree of Life actually is great as well, but I would go with Harvest Moon a lot of the time. And finally, we have Echowood. You might recognize Echowood from every single other comp, because Echowood, what Echowood's ability ends up doing is making every comp in the game that has buffs even stronger. In this case, it just means that when your Jormungand gets the slay buffs, the Echowood gets the buffs, and Echowood works best with things that get a lot of buffs in combat. Obviously, the Jormungand, which has the temporary buff in combat, works well with the Echowood. So Echowood's going to be one of the more competitive cards that everyone's looking for, but if you see one, it really just, amplifies the snowballiness of the Jormungand, and it also, of course, works great with Tree of Life. Having 2 big characters means that the they can each absorb some damage, and then when your other characters die off, they both heal back up. So Echowood's great in every comp, but it I should note that it also works well here. And just finally, Muete is a hero that not a lot of people end up using just because it seems a little weak, but if you have a Grim Soul and you're trying to get that trigger consistently as a core of your comp, then it's easy to see why Muete doubling that would be huge. If you have, an upgraded Grim Soul triggering, the slay abilities multiple times, ups your scaling by 40/40 for each proc on that. And Muete is going to be a good thing to either, if you happen to choose it, off the initial roll, or if you see it was all a dream and switch into it. Muete is actually one of those heroes that's not particularly good to pick early on, but is a very good choice to switch into. So keep an eye out for that. If you get to late game, you're looking for a spell, you don't see like a polymorph or something, Muete might be one that might give you some long game power if you're doing that. How do you get into this is basically you'll often have, a Grim Soul, maybe from a different Slay comp. Maybe you're trying to, work it with an Adventurer, and then it's time, you reach 6, it's time to sell off the Adventurer, and you see a Jormungand. You have a Baba Yaga lying around. Sometimes if you're on 5, you pick a Baba Yaga. It's a ranged character. It gives some buffs. And if you do have a Slay character, obviously amplifies that. So if you have one of those 2 and you see the Jormungand, I think this is generally a good comp to, give a try. I wouldn't just buy the Jormungand straight up if you don't have this supporting cast, because there's a lot of other characters you can build around, like a Bastine or a Good Boy. If you're going to put work into building around things, there's a lot of other characters you can build around. But if you already have the setup, buying a Jormungand right as you hit 6 can really allow you just to snowball over the enemy lobbies. And the more games you win, the quicker the game is going to end. If you're dishing out damage, it takes people off the board, and it really forces people to not go for super long game strategies. They really have to amp their power up now, and you put a lot of pressure on your opponent's boards and their their turn, what they're doing with their gold. And finally, just some strengths and weaknesses. It doesn't require a lot of characters or treasures. You can, it's 3 characters, maybe an Echowood. It doesn't require any specific treasures. There are a couple, that really help it out. There's, a bunch more that contribute because they're sort of generically strong. It's good against spawn comps. It's good against things that throw a lot of little characters up. Especially before they get like the Bastines and the Singing Swords. If they're just spawning, 10/10s or 20/20s, the Jormungand will attack in and get 80/80 every time it hits it. It's very hard to attrition that down as long as you're consistently attacking. There's not a lot of competition for the core characters. Grim Soul, Baba Yaga, and Jormungand just don't fit into a ton of other comps. Baba Yaga maybe fits into a few more. There's some Slay comps that might want it in the late game, but there's not that many. And Jormungand doesn't really fit into many comps at all. There are some monster comps. You could, of course, get an Oni King, which, fits well with this. All three of the core are monsters, so you could definitely throw in an Oni King and get some buffs that way. But the real core is not very big, and you have a lot of flexibility. And, it's a lot of strength right off the bat without a ton of setup. You can just win a game straight up without having to, put together a really sort of Exodia combo of baby bears and Bastines. You can just get a couple characters, and it turns out they'll just be bigger than your opponent's board sometimes. It does have some weaknesses, though, obviously, and, Pigomorph in Medusa attacks on the Jormungand, if you're building a whole comp around one thing, if that thing gets taken out, it's very easy to, get knocked off. Of course, like we said with the Bastines, if they are spawning a lot of baby bears and things like that, and they end up having, 80, 100 attack, they can attrition down the Jormungand. So there is sort of a tipping point. That's true of most comps, but the tipping point's a little bit lower with this comp. This is a comp that you really want to get right at 6, because when people start getting, it's a 3-unit comp. So if people start putting together 7-unit comps, those are often going to scale better, just because that's how game balance works. If the Jormungand can't kill something on its first slay, so after the Grimsoul goes off, if the Jormungand being 100 means it doesn't slay the enemies, you're honestly probably just going to get 7 for zeroed. You just don't have a comp at that point. And the other thing is that the characters are not super flexible. So if this comp turns out to not be working, if the enemies are just putting up too big of characters, you can't really pivot into much else without just selling your board. And I mean, if you have an Echo Wood, you can throw that in anything, but otherwise, these 3 core characters are not super flexible. We do have some sample videos of me playing with this comp. I've had some success with it in a few videos you can check out in the text post. I'm going to attach the text post in the description. You can see the videos in that post. I've had a lot of success with it. I actually haven't seen too many other people try it, but I've been going it with decent regularity and decent success. I'm ranked, my rating is about 4,100 at the moment, so it's working at reasonably high elo, but I think everyone should, experiment with it, try different comps, and see what they have success with. Thanks for watching, and, hope you have some success. Thank you.